All right, welcome back. We're going through the next part of the respiratory system. So we left off at the larynx, that's your voice box up here. And as that oxygen again moves from the outside of your body in through your nose, then goes into your nasal cavity, down through your throat, and now it goes through your larynx. It goes into your windpipe, is what you've probably heard it called most of your life, but that's technically called the trachea. And your trachea is this ribbed area you can feel on the front of your throat. If you move your fingers gently, gently up and down, you can feel that there's little bumps, 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 bumps. And those are all of your rings of your trachea. And what those are, these little cartilaginous rings that allow it to stay open and prevent it from collapsing. Because remember, oxygen and air doesn't have a lot of pressure. Like, again, just think of a balloon. That balloon isn't going to stay inflated just by being in air. You're going to have to push something through it. And you don't want to have to do that with your windpipe and all of the structures moving from the trachea. So these cartilaginous rings basically give the structure to that area and allow that tube to stay open at all times. That's why you have to have that epiglottis to cover over the top to make sure that nothing goes down into that tube, because that tube is always open. A Dorito chip will literally fall all the way down into your lungs and cause serious problems. It's like cough and all the other wheezing stuff happens. Bronchi are the first splits off of the trachea. They're the same type of structure. They're still cartilaginous rings. Again, the cartilaginous rings are still there to keep them open, but this is where we start to separate and start to branch. Brachia, bronchi, um, starts to branch off so that we can get and fill up the maximize the area of our chest cavity in order to get as much oxygen exchange happening as possible. So just remember, the trachea is kind of like the trunk, and the bronchi or bronchus, each bronchus is another branch on that tree. And then the bronchioles are like the little twigs. So if we've gone from a big, big trunk to smaller, smaller branches, and then we're out here with these little twigs, those twigs are called bronchioles. And basically, all we're doing is we're just separating the air and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting into smaller and smaller tubes so that we can get them eventually, we can get all of this air through to your alveoli. Now, your alveoli are are these little bubbles that make up most of your lungs. This is a cross section of a pig lung, and so if you can look in there, it basically looks like styrofoam, and all of those little bubbles are where bronchi were. And if you look at these big openings, there I am. That would be a major. This is probably a all your little bronchioles are all the little holes, and your bronchus are the big ones. And so you can see it's just separating to try to get air to path all the way, breaking off of this and getting all the way to all of these little areas with tiny, tiny tubes. Because this functional area, this foam area, is all alveoli. And it's all these tiny, tiny air sacs that are incredibly thin and incredibly delicate, so that you can do gas exchange in a very, very efficient way. And this is why we have to use our nose to create that homeostatic air so that when it gets in, it doesn't damage these really, really delicate alveoli. If you do not remember that, please, you have to remember alveoli are delicate, single, thin cells. That is where gas exchange happens. And anything you do to interrupt them lowers their efficiency and lowers your ability to do gas exchange. Okay, so that's probably the most important thing to remember by alveoli. Very tiny, very delicate, and are where gas exchange happen. All right. And then that's what composes of your lungs. So your lungs is just basically this big organ that houses, if you look at the orange thing, it houses all of your bronchi, your bronchioles, and your alveoli. And it basically works under pressure. Your lungs don't actually do anything, they just hang here like these do. It's your diaphragm, the muscle below it that you should already have memorized, that does all of the work. So as that muscle pushes in, it squeezes out all the air due to a vacuum, and then it can literally pull air back in from the same thing. So you breathe all the way out and then take a deep breath in, and your lungs just expand and contract because your diaphragm is changing the shape of your chest cavity. And you can also do this when you take